Welcome to Take 5. I'm Nick Park, and I'm doing a series of 5-minute messages on Jesus being at the center of the Word of God. Now, my original intention was that I would take just 40 days to do this, an introduction and then covering the 39 books of the Old Testament and showing Jesus at the center of each one of those Old Testament books. However, that's proving to be impossible. I'm still on the book of Genesis, and this is our third day in the book of Genesis, because Jesus is not just in every book of the Old Testament. Jesus is on every page of the Old Testament. He is the center of history. He's the center of theology. He's the center of the Bible. And in the book of Genesis, after Abraham, and you have Isaac, and then you have Jacob, and then of course you have the 12 tribes of Jacob. And one of the sons, of course, Joseph. For a while it seems to center in on him. And for a while you might be forgiven for thinking the book of Genesis was about Joseph, as it talks about his tribulations in Egypt and his promotions and everything else. And then right at the end of the book of Genesis, it comes back to the one that it's really all about, and where all this stuff with Joseph and his brothers is all leading up to. Because we reach the point where Jacob is dying. And Jacob now they're all in Egypt now, and Jacob is there, and his sons are all there, and he's giving a blessing to each of those sons, but not just to their sons, but the tribes that are going to come from them. And then he gives this blessing to Jacob in Genesis chapter 49 and verse 10. Jacob says this to Judah. He says, "The scepter will not depart from Judah." And of course, the scepter was a symbol of a king. "The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." And that must have seemed really strange to for Judah and for Joseph and all the other brothers that were listening then, because it's talking about a king. It's talking about the scepter, the ruler's staff. These are symbols of kingship. And of course, Israel didn't have any kings. Israel was just a family of 12 brothers. Other places had kings. Where they'd come from in Canaan, there were kings there. And of course, the Pharaoh was the king of Egypt. But none of these guys were kings, and yet here's Jacob prophesying over his son Judah and saying that the scepter, the marks of the king, will not depart from Judah until to him whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his. Now, we know with the benefit of hindsight, of course, that this is talking about Jesus, because much, much later on, it was going to be generations and hundreds of years down the line, Judah would emerge as the tribe from whom the kings of Israel would come. Not initially. The first king of Israel was Saul, who was from the tribe of Benjamin. But then, of course, David became king, and David was of the tribe of Judah. And then for the rest of the kings, you go down, and they are descendants of David. They are descendants of Judah. But all the way along, and God revealed this to Jacob hundreds of years before there was ever even the thought of having a king in Israel, that even though all these kings that were descendants of David, descendants of Judah, Solomon, right down the line until the Babylonian captivity, you look at all these kings, and they had their scepter, they had the royal staff, they had the trappings and the trimmings of kingship. And yet these did not really belong to them. They were really holding them in trust for the real king who would come. The one that would be not just king of Judah, but the one to whom all the nations would have to owe allegiance. And that, of course, is Jesus. And we know this because way then you jump forward from Genesis all the way to Revelation. In Revelation chapter 11 and verse 15, it speaks about the kingdom of our God has come, and the kingdom of his Christ, and he shall reign forever and ever. And it's only when you read the book of Revelation that you really catch the full measure of what Jacob was speaking over Judah. And I don't know if Jacob fully understood it. He probably just was speaking what God had given him to say. He maybe didn't fully understand all the implications of it. But nevertheless, way back in the book of Genesis, it was talking about Jesus. He is our King, and he is the King of all the earth. Thank you for joining us for this Take 5. Join us again tomorrow for another Take 5, your 5-minute inspirational message from Solid Rock Drogheda.